you know, Jason might retire next year, and then Nate's more in the mix as a guy uh, with interior versatility, both as a starter at guard and a backup at center.
You got your Mac and Mac guys here on Birds 365. Thank you very much for tuning in. And Johnny Mac, what do we want to tell the fine folks who are streaming in right now to Birds 365?
You got to like, share, and subscribe to the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. So you have more of this good product, but making bad jokes, I feel bad now.
It may be the only algorithm that's more difficult than figuring out the compensatory.
Yeah. Can I do that real quick for the people out there?
You can go ahead and try.
Crazy. It's really pretty simple. First of all, there's only 32 compensatory picks. Now, and now the NFL's further clouded that because they've added compensatory picks.
I thought it was easy. What do you mean clouded?
Well, no, the formula for the play. I'm saying they've added compensatory picks for minority hirings of GMs and coaches. So there's typically for players, there's 32 of them. So that's the first thing you have to understand. So it cuts off, even if you have a player, you have to have a net loss in free agency. So in other words, if you sign 3, you got to lose 4, and it goes by contract level. So the higher paid guys, the first compensatory pick, the second compensatory, and then when you get down to 32, you might be in line for a compensatory pick, but the contract's a little bit lower, and then you're SOL, as they say. So the most important part, Jody, that fans need to understand, you need to have a net loss in free agency to even be in the mix to get a comp pick. In other words, like I said, so if Derek Barnett signs somewhere and gets a decent deal, don't ask, are they going to get a compensatory pick? We don't know. We aren't going to know until the end of free agency, and we know if they have a net gain or a net loss, and then potentially they could have a compensatory pick.
Now, when you say net gain or net loss, are we talking about number of players? Or are we talking about money spent on salaries?
Both. Number of players, most, and then it cuts sort of like you have ranges. If you have like the Eagles signed Hassan Reddick, if Derek Barnett's in a similar stratosphere, which he won't be that high, but if he gets to say 9-10 million, he'll be a little bit less. Those two might knock out each other, so to speak.
Right.
So,
well, how do you determine what is a comparable?
Well, that part's a little bit. That formula is the difficult.
That's
part.
What I was getting at. Nobody can figure out that formula.
I get. Look, I don't expect fans to get that formula. I expect fans to get the easy stuff. Easy stuff is when somebody signs, don't ask, are they getting a compensatory pick? Nobody knows at that point because you got to wait for the net loss. Then you can get into the difficult parts of it. Now, there's guys who projected. Jimmy's very good at it. There's somebody else that I think his name is Nick Quartz or Corte, who's very good at it. And they keep in tune with the entire league, and they do it as it's going on, and they project it. And that's fine, but it's always fluid. Now, you were mentioning from Howie Roseman's standpoint. Look, Howie knows going into the process each year, I have no money. So potential compensatory picks are more valuable to him at that point, and he's very cognizant of it. What he knows in a year like this, he's not getting one anyway. It's not that big of a deal.
Well, I was just saying that to understand the formula that you have to use to exactly know whether you are losing or not losing, or you're getting a match or not, is actually pretty darn difficult to understand. And I give a guy like Kemsky a lot of credit for understanding it. But then you're right, he sucks Eagle fans into evaluating every move that's made and what kind of effect it will have on the competitor. What team has won a Super Bowl because they so well that use their compensatory picks? I don't think there's
Well,
any.
the irony is, most bands want, obviously their team to sign players, sign this guy, sign
Right.
this guy, sign the
Which
more,
hurts.
yes, which means you're not getting compensatory picks. So that's the irony of it all. But um, Martin's also right when he says, look, Jacksonville, I don't think Jacksonville has ever gotten a compensatory pick, not once in their entire, because all they're doing is they're bad every year, with the exception of the 1 year with Doug Marone.
I
And they're always signed. They always have a lot of money. They're always signing people. They never get comp picks.
Top of the show, we did kind of get off on a Greg Ward tangent because I was a little surprised that the Eagles brought him back. I thought that Greg Ward's days as an Eagle receiver were numbered. But the two other moves we haven't even touched on yet. The Eagles did, as you correctly predicted, and others did as well. But you were right, John, when you said you thought that they would give the tender to Nate Herbig $2.4 million, which means now any other team could jump in and make a bid on him, but the Eagles would have the right to match. So I think you did this to Martin Frank. I'm going to turn around to it to you. You put on your Howie Roseman cap, McMullen. Another team offers Nate Herbig a 2-year contract, $6 million total, which is more than the 2.5 the Eagles are willing to pay this year, and $3 million of it guaranteed. So if you find out, he isn't near as good as you can't just cut him. You can, but you'd have to take a $3 million dead cap hit. If a team were to put that type of an offer out there to Nate Herbig, Eagles say, no, he's ours. Thank you very much for setting the parameters of his deal. We'll be matching it. Or do they say, good luck, Big Nate?
That's a good number, Jody. I'm going to give you credit for it. I would match that offer if I were Howie Roseman. Now, if you get to 4 million, maybe even 3.5 million, then I start to seriously think about it. Because look, the Eagles know they've had so many injuries on the offensive line over the past really 2 seasons. How important it is to have depth at that particular position. But on the other hand, I mean, like people forget Isaac Sayamalu is coming back. You have Landon Dickerson who's entrenched. Jason Kelsey's now back. Jack Driscoll's going to be back, and he's had some injury issues. I mean, it's unlikely you still have Suo Pettit, the Tesla stock. It's unlikely that Nate Herbig is going to play a lot this upcoming season. On the other hand, it was unlikely he was going to play a lot last season, and he did. And it was even more unlikely he's going to play a lot the season before, and he played a lot. So it would be a difficult decision. I think your number, I think I'd match. I'd feel comfortable with, and part of that is because, Jason might retire next year, and then then Nate's more in the mix as a guy with interior versatility, both as a starter at guard and a backup at center. He wouldn't be a starting center. I don't want to go down that route, but so I think the uncertainty surrounding Jason Kelsey, the year-to-year nature of him at this point, creates a little bit more of a need to keep him. So I think the Eagles would do that. But if you start inching up, there's so much need. Matt Pryor, Jody. You see the number he got?
Yeah.
Nate Herbig's a better player than Matt Pryor. Now, Matt can play outside, so obviously tackles get a little bit more money than interior players. But if somebody's out there and somebody's desperate and they say, oh, Nate Herbig, he's played pretty well, it could be tough. It's one of those rare, usually when you tender a restricted free agent, you just turn out the light, go to bed, sleep soundly. You're not worried about anybody coming swooping in. It's a little bit of a concern with Nate Herbig because he's played so much and people will recognize it.
That's why I asked you the hypothetical question I did to kind of put you on the spot there. And I'll readily admit this bothers me, and I should just accept it as the group think that is now the National Football League. John, who had a larger influence, or rank these three guys for me who had an influence on the Eagles winning and or losing games? Just they contributed more to winning and or losing this past season for the Eagles. Nate Herbig, Boston Scott, Alex Singleton. Put them in an order for me.
Alex Singleton 1, Nate Herbig 2, Boston Scott 3.
Yeah, see, I got Boston Scott ahead of Nate Herbig.
Boston didn't play a lot. I don't think people realize, Boston is sort of that sneaky guy. I always use I like the Sugar Ray Leonard analogy when in boxing, Sugar Ray sort of created that flurry at the end of the round and you steal the round, and that's all the judges remember. When Boston gets in there, he makes splash plays, and that's all the judges remember. But he doesn't play a lot. He's not. I mean, those guys were out on the field for significant periods. And even when Boston does play, and some of the injuries piled up with Miles and Jordan Howard, and he did play more significantly. It was for a short period of time. But when he's out there, he makes splash plays, and I think he's Sugar Ray Leonard's people. That's my comparison there. Those guys were significant. Alex, leading tackler on the team. Nate Herbig, because of all the injuries, essentially a starter at the end of the season. Full-time players, I guess, would be why I'm leaning it more in their direction.
Yeah, maybe I'm a sucker for splash plays, but last time I checked, the way that they're still evaluating who wins and loses in the National Football League is who scores the most points. Boston.
Well, it's hard to make a offensive lineman to make a splash play. I mean, you can Quentin Nelson somebody, and occasionally it'll go viral. A giant pancake block. Jordan Mailata. I shouldn't even went. I should have kept it local.
Right. Can you please give me the website where I can go and watch the Quentin Nelson or Jordan Mailata like Nate Herbig
Well, that's
play?
what I'm saying.
I'd like to know where I can find that.
Well, you can find it. Offensive line people, they love Quentin Nelson. It's like
no. I'm talking about the Nate Herbig plays.
Oh, no. Well, that's my point. I mean, I'm not comparing. I'm not saying Nate Herbig's the best guard in football or one of the best. I'm not comparing him as a player. I'm saying in nature, offensive linemen don't make splash plays except for the occasional pancake block of Quentin Nelson or Jordan Mailata. It's kind of hard for them to make sure. Trent Williams would be in that category as well. It's kind of hard for them to make offensive linemen to make splash plays. But guess what, Jody? They're stinking important. Boston Scott will tell you how important they are because if they're not blocking, if they're not pinning somebody, if they're not pinning and pulling correctly, So, I mean, the Eagles believe in building up front, spending money, as Martin said, offensive, defensive line. Yeah, I mean, it's not going to show up. It's not going to be splashy, but it's important. Your question to me was who was more important to winning. Yes. I think those guys are more important to winning than
scoring touchdowns. Very important to winning.
Oh, how do you score touchdowns?
And Boston Scott scored 7 of them.
How do you
7?
If you don't have blocking as a running back, how do you score touchdowns? Jordan Howard scored touchdowns. Miles Sanders didn't. That weird dichotomy. I mean, they take him out. He's not a goal line player, which, is more of an indictment of Miles Sanders than anything about Jordan Howard or Boston Scott. Somebody's got to score the
Well,
touchdowns. I mean,
I will suggest that he was following other guys on the offensive line much more so than Nate Herbig.
well, that part's fair. That's part fair.
Do me a favor, Mr. Pro Football Focus. Where does Nate Herbig rank?
Oh, Nate Herbie ranks very well, but I'll look it up.
Okay,
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I'm not overly concerned, but I think somebody, might wake up and say, let's push the Eagles and see if we can sign an offer sheet there, and try to get a guy who's, remember, he's not going to be a starter here because the Eagles do have such impressive depth. And they might take a flyer on him. But I'll look real quick. 30. Nate Herbig was 30 at the offensive guards in the NFL. So you think about it, there's 32 teams, Jody, 64 starting guards. Nate Herbig was number 30. And by the way, 30 of 82 in 2020, which I've said this before on the show, number 13 of 80 in the NFL.
Last year, or the 2020 season, Herbig was 13th?
Yeah.
So he went backwards badly this year, is what you're telling me.
He went backwards, and he's not, but 30's not bad. 30 is
30's not bad out of 80. I'll give you that, but a guy who's going in the wrong direction. I just think they undersold Boston Scott. Is Jordan Howard retired?
If he does, it'll be late in the process.
As agreed. So the Eagles have how many backs under contract right now?
Yeah, but here's the deal, Jody. Here's the deal. The tender is 2.433 million. Okay. There are, and I'm gonna do it real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 30 running backs in the NFL that make more than 2.433 million. It's more about the position than anything else. You're not going to pay a third string running back. There's 32 teams, 32 starting running backs. You're not going to pay a third string running back. That's not Howie Roseman. That's not Jake Rosenberg. That's where the analytics of the salary cap come into play. They don't have to pay Boston Scott to. It's not an indication that they don't want him. In fact, I do think they want him back. I think he's another guy. They like him as a player, but they regard him as their third string running back, a very good third string running back. But they're not going to pay $2.433 million for a third string running back. That's what Boston Scott is about.
Fair enough. I will suggest that they should, and I would not be surprised if Boston Scott, when he gets to full free agency, which he will as of today, because the Eagles chose not to tender him, gets that kind of offer on the open market, even at a depressed position like running back. The salaries just continue to come back and back and back and are less and less and less at running back. I still think that somebody's going to see the value of Boston Scott at his age and his production. And yes, when I say production, it's more of an average than it is a total comp, because yes, the Eagles chose not to use him because Jordan Howard kind of came out of nowhere and had as good a season as he did. I think they could have been just as effective using Boston Scott. I think somebody's going to make a play for him. I think he's one of those free agents, and the only upside will be Jimmy Kempski. This one's for you, buddy. Eagles losing a free agent. Next year's compensatory draft may actually be improved because they lose Boston Scott and he goes somewhere else and joins another team. I just believe that Alex Singleton and Boston Scott, it came down to three guys. They had three guys that they could legitimately throw a tender on, Singleton, Scott, and Herbig, and they decided to put it on Herbig. I think that's just purely because of the way the National Football evaluates positions, not the individual players. I think Nate Herbig's a guy. He may be a big guy, but I think he's a guy. Boston Scott actually has a nose for the end zone, and Alex Singleton actually does have the ability to get 100 tackles. I think the other two have actually produced. I know it's so hard to evaluate offensive linemen unless you're looking at coaching tape and the like, and you lean on Pro Football Focus, which they've got him as a pretty good ranking. I was just surprised that the one guy they decided to tender was a guy who I would rank third as having an impact on whether the Eagles did or didn't win games this year.
Well, that's the number real quick. I know we got to Derek on. If he gets more than 2.433 million, and by the way, 4:00, they still might sign Boston Scott before 4:00. We still got time.
True. We'll put that one to our next guest. See how big a Boston Scott fan he is. I am. Raise my hand. We'll see if D Gunn is well. Derek Gunn, our very own from the JAKIB Media YouTube channel, is going to join us next here on Birds 365.
Go for the midnight dares. Go for the